The great chamber of the Galactic Council was silent. Representatives from 100 different worlds sat in their seats, watching the scene below with growing unease. The air itself seemed to tremble with tension. General Vekthar stood at the center of the chamber. He was massive, even for a Kethvoran. 8 feet of red scales, thick muscle, and ancient battle scars. His yellow eyes burned with contempt as he looked down at the small group of humans standing before him. The Kethvoran Empire had conquered 47 worlds in the last 3 cycles. No species had ever stopped them. No army had ever defeated them. Vekthar himself had led the charge on 30 of those worlds. They called him the Unbroken, because in 200 years of warfare, he had never lost a single battle. Now he had come to the Galactic Council to deliver a message to the newest spacefaring species. The humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They had only one world. They were nothing. "You have 30 cycles to surrender," Vekthar announced. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "Your planet will become property of the Kethvoran Empire. Your people will serve us. This is not a negotiation. This is a fact." The human delegation consisted of 5 people. 4 of them were diplomats in formal clothes. They looked nervous, but their leader, a woman named Director Elena Vasquez, showed no fear at all. She was small compared to the alien general. Her hair was gray, and her face was lined with age. But her eyes were sharp and steady. "General," she said calmly, "we have received your demands. We would like to discuss a peaceful solution." Vekthar laughed. It was an ugly sound that echoed through the chamber. Several alien delegates flinched at the noise. "Peaceful solution?" the general repeated. "You humans are even weaker than I thought. My intelligence officers told me your species has not even mobilized its military. Every other world we conquered at least tried to fight. They gathered their armies. They prepared their defenses. They died with honor." He stepped closer to the human delegation. His massive shadow fell over them like a dark cloud. "But you send diplomats. You send paperwork. You ask for negotiations." He spat the last word like it was poison. "You humans are cowards. You are prey animals pretending to be people." The other alien delegates whispered among themselves. Some of them looked at the humans with pity. Others looked away, not wanting to watch this humiliation. But Director Vasquez did not react to the insult. She simply looked at her datapad, checked something, and then looked back up at the 8-foot reptilian warlord. "General Vekthar," she said, "I think there has been a misunderstanding." "Oh, what misunderstanding?" "You believe we have not mobilized because we are afraid." "That is incorrect." Vekthar tilted his massive head. For a moment, something like curiosity flickered in his yellow eyes. "Then why haven't you prepared your forces? Why haven't you gathered your armies? My fleet of 3,000 warships will arrive at your world in 40 cycles. 50 million of my soldiers are ready to take your planet. What do you have to stop us?" Director Vasquez smiled. It was a small smile, polite and professional, but something about it made several nearby delegates feel suddenly cold. "We are sending 1 soldier," she said. The chamber went completely silent. Even Vekthar seemed frozen for a moment, unsure if he had heard correctly. Then the laughter started. It began with Vekthar, a deep booming sound that shook the floor. Soon, other delegates joined in. The idea was absurd. 1 soldier against 50 million, 1 human against the greatest military force in the galaxy. 1 soldier, Vekthar roared with amusement. 1 soldier. Did you hear that, Council? The humans are sending 1 soldier to stop the Kethvoran Empire. He laughed until tears formed in his reptilian eyes. Then, slowly, the laughter died as he noticed something strange. The humans were not laughing. They were not embarrassed. They were not afraid. Director Vasquez stood perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her back. Her expression had not changed at all. She looked like someone who had just stated a simple fact, like saying the sky was blue or water was wet. You are serious?" Vekthar asked. The amusement was fading from his voice. "Completely serious, General. 1 soldier. Against my entire fleet. Against 50 million warriors who have never known defeat." "Yes." Vekthar studied her face. He had interrogated thousands of prisoners over the centuries. He knew how to spot lies, how to see fear hidden behind brave words. But he saw nothing like that in this human woman. He saw only absolute, unshakable certainty. It made no sense. It was impossible. And yet, who is this soldier? He demanded. What kind of weapon do you think one human can be against the might of the HFY? Director Vasquez's smile faded. For just a moment, something passed across her face. It might have been sadness. It might have been regret. It was gone before Vecthar could identify it. His name is classified, she said. His capabilities are classified. Everything about him is classified. All you need to know is that he will be waiting for you when your fleet arrives. This is madness, Vecthar growled. This is the delusion of a dying species. You think one human can stop us? My soldiers have crushed armies of millions. We have burned worlds that resisted us. We have ended civilizations that were ancient when your ancestors were still living in caves. Yes, Director Vasquez agreed. You have done all of those things, and none of those species were human. She gathered her datapad and nodded to her fellow delegates. They began to leave the chamber. 30 cycles, General, she called back over her shoulder. I suggest you use that time to review your decision. The offer of peaceful negotiation will remain open until your fleet enters our solar system. After that, she paused at the doorway. After that, you will meet our soldier. And I suspect you will wish you had chosen peace. Then she was gone. The human delegation walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, leaving behind a room full of confused and frightened aliens. Vecthar stood alone in the center of the floor. His clawed hands were clenched into fists. His mind was racing, trying to understand what had just happened. It was a bluff. It had to be a bluff. No species was stupid enough to send one soldier against 3,000 warships. The humans were trying to trick him, to make him hesitate, to buy time. But time for what? They had no fleet. They had no army. They had nothing. Cowards, he muttered to himself. Foolish, delusional cowards. He turned and marched out of the chamber. In 40 cycles, his fleet would reach Earth. He would burn their cities. He would enslave their people. And he would personally find this one soldier they were so confident about and tear him apart with his bare claws. The Kethvoran Empire had never been defeated, and they would not be defeated by one human. Far away, on a small blue planet called Earth, something was happening deep beneath the Arctic ice, in a facility that appeared on no map, in a room that officially did not exist. Ancient machines began to wake up. Lights flickered on in hallways that had been dark for 300 years. Computers that had been sleeping since before the first human stepped onto another world hummed back to life. At the center of the facility, in a chamber carved from solid rock, there was a single cryopod. Frost covered its surface. Inside, floating in preservation fluid, was a human figure. The pod began its awakening sequence. Warning lights flashed. Alarms sounded. Automated systems that had waited patiently for centuries finally received the signal they had been programmed to expect. The frost on the pod began to melt. The preservation fluid started to drain, and inside the pod, a pair of eyes opened. They were human eyes, brown and unremarkable, but they were old. So very, very old. They had seen things that would drive most beings insane. They had done things that still gave humanity nightmares. The soldier was awake, and the galaxy would soon learn why humanity only needed one. The facility was called Black Site Omega. It existed 2 miles beneath the Arctic ice, built into ancient stone that was older than human civilization. No satellite could see it. No scanner could detect it. As far as the rest of humanity knew, this place did not exist. Director Elena Vasquez stood before the cryopod as the awakening sequence completed. Steam hissed from vents in the walls. The preservation fluid had drained away, leaving the figure inside wet and shivering. He did not look special. That was the first thing everyone noticed about him. He was average height, maybe a little shorter. His hair was brown with streaks of gray at the temples. His face was plain, the kind of face you would forget 5 minutes after seeing it. He could have been anyone's neighbor, anyone's coworker, anyone's friend, but his eyes told a different story. When they opened and focused on Vasquez, she felt a chill run down her spine. Those eyes had seen the death of worlds. Those eyes belonged to something that was no longer entirely human. How long? His voice was rough and dry from centuries of silence. 312 years. Vasquez replied. He stepped out of the pod on unsteady legs. Medical drones immediately flew to his side, scanning his body, checking his vital signs. He ignored them completely. And you woke me because, An alien empire is coming to enslave humanity. They have given us 30 cycles to surrender. Their fleet has 3,000 warships and 50 million soldiers. The man who had been sleeping for 3 centuries processed this information. His eyes flickered strangely for a moment, and Vasquez knew that his neural implants were activating, downloading centuries of human history directly into his brain. One empire, he said after a moment. He almost sounded disappointed. Just one. They have conquered 47 worlds. They have never been defeated. Then they have never fought a human. He began walking toward the equipment bay. His steps were already steadier, his body remembering how to move after its long sleep. Vasquez followed him, her guards trailing nervously behind. "Before you prepare," she said, "I need to know that you understand the situation. The Galactic Council thinks we are insane. Even our own people think this plan is madness. Sending one soldier against an invasion fleet." He stopped and turned to face her. Up close, she could see the faint scars that covered his skin. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. Some were from bullets, some were from blades, some were from weapons that no longer existed. "Director," he said quietly, "do you know why they put me to sleep 300 years ago? Because the gene wars were over. Because you asked to rest. No. They put me to sleep because they were afraid of me." He resumed walking. "They were right to be afraid. I ended the gene wars in 6 days. Not 6 years, 6 days. Do you know how many people died in those 6 days?" Vasquez did not answer. She knew the number. Everyone who had access to classified files knew the number. It was burned into her memory like a scar. 14 million, he said. "I killed 14 million people in 6 days. Men, women, soldiers, generals. I did not stop. I did not rest. I did not negotiate. I simply killed until there was no one left to kill." They reached the equipment bay. Rows of weapons lined the walls, some ancient, some impossibly advanced. Combat suits hung in sealed cases. Drones waited silently in their charging stations. "That was why I asked to sleep," he continued. "Not because I was tired. Because I looked at what I had done, and I could not live with it. I had become something worse than the enemies I was fighting. I had become a monster." He selected a combat suit from the wall. It was sleek and black, covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them too long. "But now you need a monster. So here I am." Vasquez watched him dress in silence. The combat suit bonded with his skin, connecting to the cybernetic implants that ran throughout his body. Weapons systems activated. Tactical displays lit up inside his eyes. "What should I call you?" she asked. The files used different names. Subject 0. The Reaper. Prometheus. "My enemies called me Cain," he said. It seemed appropriate. The first murderer. He picked up a rifle that looked like no weapon Vasquez had ever seen. It hummed with energy when his hands touched it, recognizing its master after 300 years. "Tell me about this alien general," Cain said. "The one leading the invasion. His name is Vecthar. They call him the Unbroken. He has never lost a battle in 200 years. He is intelligent, brutal, and absolutely convinced of his own superiority." "Good. Good?" Can smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Pride makes people predictable. This general thinks he knows what war looks like. He thinks he understands violence. He has conquered 47 worlds using the same tactics, the same strategies, the same assumptions about how battles are fought." He loaded the rifle with practiced ease. "He has never fought something like me. He does not know that humans spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. He does not know that we nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times before we reached the stars. He does not know what happens when you push humanity into a corner and give them no choice but to fight." Can walked toward the exit of the equipment bay. The doors opened automatically, recognizing his biosignature. "One soldier," Vasquez said to his back. "You really think one soldier is enough?" Can stopped at the doorway. He did not turn around. "Director, I am not a soldier. Soldiers follow orders. Soldiers fight in armies. Soldiers have limits." He looked back over his shoulder. In the dim light of the facility, his eyes seemed to glow with an inner fire. "I am what happens when humanity decides something must die. I am 300 years of military evolution, compressed into one body. I am every dirty trick, every ruthless strategy, every desperate tactic that humans ever invented to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves." He stepped through the doorway. One of me is not enough to conquer an empire, but one of me is more than enough to break one. The doors closed behind him, leaving Vasquez alone in the equipment bay. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. She had read the files. She had watched the footage from the Gene Wars. She had seen what CAIN was capable of, but seeing him in person, hearing him speak, looking into those ancient, tired, terrifying eyes, for the first time, she understood why humanity had buried him beneath miles of ice and prayed they would never need him again. And for the first time, she felt something that might have been hope. The Keth Varan were coming with 3,000 ships and 50 million soldiers. They thought they were invading a defenseless world. They thought humans were cowards who could not fight. They were wrong. Humanity had not refused to fight because they were weak. Humanity had refused to fight because they knew what would happen if they did. They had buried their weapons. They had hidden their monsters. They had chosen peace because they remembered what war had cost them. But now the choice had been taken from them. Now an alien empire was coming to enslave their children and burn their world. Now, for the first time in 300 years, humanity was reaching into the darkness and pulling out the nightmare they had tried so hard to forget. CAN boarded his ship alone. It was small and fast, designed for stealth and speed rather than direct combat. As he powered up the engines, he felt the familiar weight of violence settling onto his shoulders. He did not want this. He had never wanted this. He was tired of killing, tired of death, tired of being the monster that humanity needed, but he would do it anyway, because that was what he was made for. The ship lifted off and shot toward the stars. Behind him, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just a blue dot in the infinite black. Somewhere ahead, 3,000 alien warships were approaching. 50 million soldiers were preparing for conquest. A general called the Unbroken was dreaming of victory. None of them knew what was coming. None of them could possibly understand. The last human soldier was awake, and he had work to do. The Keth Varan invasion fleet entered the Sol system like a swarm of metal locusts. 3,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons capable of burning cities to ash. 50 million soldiers, each one trained from birth to kill and conquer. At the center of the formation, the flagship Eternal Dominion carried General Vecthar himself. He stood on the bridge, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. Earth hung in the distance, a small blue marble against the black void of space. It looked fragile, helpless, doomed. "General," his communications officer called out. "We are receiving a transmission from the human system. Put it through." The main screen flickered, and a face appeared. It was human, unremarkable, almost boring to look at. The man was wearing some kind of dark combat suit. His expression was completely calm. "This is Cain, representing the human species," the man said. "I am offering you one chance to withdraw. Take it." Vecthar laughed. The bridge crew joined in, their rough voices filling the command center. "One human," Vecthar said, "threatening 3,000 ships? Little creature, I will personally eat your heart." The human on the screen did not react to the threat. He simply tilted his head slightly, like a predator studying its prey. "You will have to catch me first." The transmission ended. Vecthar snorted with contempt. "Find that ship and destroy it. Then we proceed to Earth." The hunt began. Keth Varan sensor systems swept through space, searching for the tiny human vessel. It should have been easy. One small ship against an entire fleet, like finding a single insect in an empty room. But the ship was not there. The sensors found nothing. "Expand the search," Vecthar ordered. "He is hiding somewhere. No ship can be invisible to our technology." 2 hours passed, then 4, then 8. The fleet continued moving toward Earth, but there was no sign of the human ship. Vecthar began to grow impatient. Then the reports started coming in. The destroyer Crimson Fury was the first. Its communications went silent without warning. When other ships moved to investigate, they found it drifting dead in space. All power was gone. All systems were offline. The entire command crew was dead, killed with precise strikes that had left no survivors. There was no sign of any attacker. "Impossible," Vecthar growled. "How did anyone board that ship without being detected?" Before anyone could answer, another report came in. The cruiser Iron Wrath had gone silent. Then the battleship Conquest. Then 3 more destroyers in rapid succession. In 12 hours, 47 ships were destroyed or disabled. Not by enemy fleets, not by missiles or energy weapons, by something that moved through the Kethvoran formation like a ghost, striking without warning and vanishing without trace. Vekthar studied the tactical display with growing unease. The attacks formed no pattern he could recognize. They hit supply ships and battleships equally. They struck from different directions, at different times, with no apparent strategy. Or perhaps the strategy was simply chaos. Fear. Uncertainty. He is not trying to destroy the fleet, Vekthar realized. He is trying to break our spirit. General, his tactical officer said nervously. The crews are becoming frightened. There are reports of soldiers refusing to sleep. Some are saying we are being hunted by a demon. There are no demons, Vekthar snarled. There is only one human with a fast ship and some clever tricks. Find him. But they could not find him. Can did not fight like any enemy the Kethvoran had ever faced. He did not meet them in battle. He did not challenge them directly. He was patient, silent, and everywhere at once. He hacked their communications and broadcast false orders. He sabotaged their supply lines and left ships stranded without fuel. He turned their own automated defense systems against them, making guns fire at friendly targets. And when he boarded a ship, he killed with terrible efficiency. Not random slaughter, but precise elimination. He targeted officers, commanders, anyone who gave orders. He left the common soldiers alive, traumatized and leaderless, to spread fear to every other vessel in the fleet. On the 23rd day, Can boarded the flagship Eternal Dominion. Vekthar was in his private quarters when the alarm started screaming. He grabbed his weapon and charged toward the bridge, but the corridors were already full of chaos. Dead guards lay everywhere. Living soldiers ran in every direction, firing at shadows. The general found Can standing in the main corridor, surrounded by the bodies of 200 elite Kethvoran warriors. The human was not even breathing hard. His combat suit was spotted with purple blood, but he showed no signs of injury. General Vekthar, Cain said, I have been waiting to meet you. Vekthar raised his weapon, but he did not fire. He wanted answers first. How? He demanded. How did you board my ship? How did you kill so many of my soldiers? How is any of this possible? Can looked at the bodies around him with something like sadness in his eyes. Your species is strong, he said. Your soldiers are brave, but you have never fought humans. You do not understand what we are. He took a step forward. Vekthar did not retreat, but every instinct in his body was screaming warnings. We are not the biggest creatures on our world, Cain continued. We are not the fastest or the strongest, but we survived anyway. Do you know how? Tell me. We became the most efficient killers our planet had ever seen. We learned to hunt animals 10 times our size. We learned to track prey for days without rest. We learned to use tools, to set traps, to work together in ways other species could not match. Cain reached into his belt and pulled out a small data chip, and then we turned those skills on each other. For thousands of years, humans killed humans. We became so good at it that we nearly destroyed ourselves. We invented weapons that could burn entire cities in seconds. We created poisons that could kill millions with a single drop. We built machines designed for nothing but death. He tossed the data chip to Vekthar. The general caught it instinctively. That contains classified footage from our last great war. The war that created me. Watch it. Show it to your officers. And then decide if you still want to attack Earth. Vekthar looked at the chip in his clawed hand. His pride told him to crush it, to attack this arrogant human, to prove the superiority of the Kethvoran. But something in Cain's eyes stopped him. Why are you not trying to kill me? He asked. Because I want you to make a choice, Cain replied. Leave now, and your empire survives. Continue this invasion, and I will teach the galaxy why humans learn to bury their weapons instead of using them. The lights on the ship flickered. Somewhere in the distance, explosions echoed through the corridors. Can's sabotage was spreading through the flagship systems. You have one day, Cain said. After that, I stop holding back. He stepped backward into the shadows. Vekthar lunged forward with his weapon, but the human was already gone, vanished like smoke in the wind. The general stood alone in the corridor, surrounded by the bodies of his finest warriors, holding a small data chip that suddenly felt heavier than a mountain. That night, Vekthar watched the footage alone in his quarters. He saw cities burning, He saw armies dissolving in waves of fire. He saw humans killing humans with weapons that defied imagination. And at the center of it all, he saw CAIN, moving through the chaos like death itself. Unstoppable, relentless, terrifying. But the worst part was not the killing. The worst part was the end, when human generals stood before their leaders and begged them to stop CAN. Not because he was losing, because he was winning too fast, too completely. They were afraid that if he continued, there would be nothing left. For the first time in 200 years of warfare, General Vecthar the Unbroken felt his hands tremble, and for the first time, he understood that his enemy was not one human with a fast ship. His enemy was the thing that humanity had created when they decided something had to die. The most terrifying part was not that humans had made such a monster, it was that they had chosen to bury him instead of using him. What else were they hiding? General Vecthar stood before his war council in the great chamber of the Eternal Dominion. The surviving commanders of his fleet watched him with nervous eyes. They had all heard the stories. They had all seen the bodies. They all knew that something was hunting them through the darkness of space. "We have two choices," Vecthar announced. "We can retreat to Kethvaran space and admit defeat, or we can commit everything we have to destroying this human and taking Earth." The commanders shifted uncomfortably. None of them wanted to suggest retreat. In the Kethvaran Empire, failure was punished with death. Retreat was the ultimate failure. "General," one commander said carefully, "the human has destroyed or disabled 93 ships. Our soldiers are terrified. Morale is collapsing. One human," Vecthar growled. "One human has done this, and you want to run? I want to survive." Vecthar slammed his fist on the table. The metal dented under his strength. "We are the Kethvaran. We have conquered 47 worlds. We have crushed armies of millions. We will not be defeated by one creature." He looked around the chamber, meeting each commander's eyes. "Today we attack Earth directly. All remaining ships, all remaining soldiers. We will burn their cities and enslave their people. And when we find this CAN, we will tear him apart and mount his skull on the walls of our throne room." The commanders did not argue. They knew there was no point. Vecthar had made his decision, and they would follow it or die. The fleet reorganized into attack formation. Over 2,000 ships remained operational, carrying more than 40 million soldiers. It was still an overwhelming force, more than enough to crush any world. But as they approached Mars, everything changed. CAN had been waiting for this moment. He had spent weeks preparing, planning, manipulating. He had not been trying to destroy the fleet. He had been herding it, guiding it into exactly the position he wanted. The trap was sprung. All around the fleet, space itself seemed to come alive. Hidden defense platforms activated, emerging from behind asteroids and moons. They were not large, but there were thousands of them. Kinetic projectiles launched at impossible speeds, punching through ship hulls like needles through cloth. But that was only the distraction. The real weapon was already inside the fleet. CAN had spent the last week uploading fragments of himself into every ship he had boarded, pieces of his consciousness, hidden in computer systems, waiting for his signal. Now those fragments activated. Across the fleet, ships began to malfunction. Weapons systems locked onto friendly targets. Navigation computers plotted collision courses. Life support systems failed in random sections, forcing crews to evacuate into the corridors. The Kethvaran were not fighting one enemy. They were fighting themselves. "What is happening?" Vecthar roared as his flagship shuddered around him. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. Emergency lights painted everything in red. "He is in our systems," the tactical officer screamed. "He is controlling our ships from the inside. That is impossible. Purge all computer systems, switch to manual control." But it was too late. CAIN had planned for this. The ships that switched to manual control found their crews fighting each other, unable to tell which orders were real and which were fabricated. The fleet dissolved into chaos. Ships crashed into each other. Weapons fired in every direction. Soldiers killed their own commanders, convinced they were traitors. Through it all, CAN moved like a shadow of death. His physical body boarded ship after ship, eliminating command crews and vanishing before anyone could react. Every ship he touched fell silent, within minutes. General Vecthar watched his fleet die around him. 2,000 ships, reduced to burning wreckage and floating corpses. 40 million soldiers, killed by fear and confusion. and their own weapons, and one human. Find him, Vecthar commanded. His voice was quiet now, cold with rage. Bring him to me. I will end this personally. CAN found him first. The flagship was burning when CAN walked onto the bridge. He was alone, his combat suit scarred and damaged from hours of continuous fighting. His weapons were empty. He had killed so many that he had run out of ammunition. Vecthar stood waiting for him. The general was wounded. Purple blood dripped from a dozen cuts on his scaled body, but his eyes burned with hatred, and his clawed hands were still strong. So, Vecthar said, the demon finally shows himself. I am not a demon, Kane replied. I am just a human who was built to kill things. What are you then? Some kind of super soldier? A genetic experiment? Both, and neither. Kane walked closer, stepping over the bodies of bridge crew. 300 years ago, humanity tried to create the perfect weapon. They took 10,000 volunteers and subjected them to processes that should have been fatal. Genetic modification, cybernetic implants, neural enhancement, things that pushed the boundaries of what a human body could survive. And you survived. I was the only one. A statistical impossibility. A 1 in a trillion combination of luck and genetics and stubbornness. Kane stopped a few feet from Vecthar. They made me to win a war. I did. Then I asked them to put me to sleep. Vecthar bared his teeth in what might have been a smile. Because you were tired of killing? Because I was too good at it. I ended the gene wars in 6 days. 14 million dead. And when it was over, I looked at what I had become, and I was horrified. The ship groaned around them. Fires burned in every section. They did not have much time. Then why are you here now? Vecthar asked. Why wake up and kill again? Because your empire came to enslave my people. Because you threatened the children of a world that just wanted to be left alone. Because sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to become the monster everyone fears. Vecthar roared and charged. The fight was brutal. CAN was faster, but Vecthar was stronger and had nothing left to lose. They crashed through walls, tore through corridors, destroyed everything around them. The general's claws left deep gouges in CAIN's combat suit. Kane's fists cracked Vecthar's scales like hammers hitting stone. They fought for what seemed like hours. 2 apex predators, each determined to destroy the other. In the end, CAIN won. Not through strength or speed, but through endurance. Humans were persistence hunters. They had evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Kane simply refused to stop, refused to slow down, refused to die. Vecthar fell to his knees, too wounded to continue. Purple blood pooled around him. His breathing was ragged and wet. Finish it, he growled. Kill me, and be done. But CAIN did not strike the final blow. Instead, he crouched down to meet Vecthar's eyes. Go home, he said quietly. Take what remains of your fleet and leave. Tell your empire what you saw here. Tell them that humans do not want war. We will never invade your worlds. We will never try to conquer your people. Why spare me? Because I want you to deliver a message. Kane's eyes were ancient and tired. Tell them this. If anyone threatens Earth again, we will not send one soldier. We will send what we used the last time someone pushed us too far. Vecthar stared at him. Even through the pain, even through the defeat, his mind was still working. What did you use? He gasped. CAN stood up. For a long moment, he was silent. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Nothing. We used nothing. Because I killed everything before they could deploy it. He began walking toward the exit, leaving Vecthar broken on the floor. That is why they keep me asleep, General. I am not humanity's greatest weapon. I am the thing they built to make sure they never have to use their greatest weapons. The words hung in the air like a curse. What could be worse than you? Vecthar called after him. CAIN stopped at the doorway. He did not turn around. Pray you never find out. Then he was gone, leaving the unbroken general alone in the burning wreckage of his flagship. Outside, the remains of the invasion fleet drifted through space. Less than 200 ships had survived. Less than 5 million soldiers remained alive. And somewhere in the darkness, one human soldier began the long journey home. 3 months had passed since the battle. The Galactic Council chamber was fuller than anyone could remember. Representatives from every known species had gathered to hear the testimony of General Vecthar. The being who had once been called the Unbroken now walked with a limp, Scars covered his body. His eyes held a haunted look that had not been there before. I came here 3 months ago, he began, to mock humanity as cowards. I called them prey animals. I laughed when they said they would send one soldier to stop my fleet. The chamber was completely silent. Every being watched the broken general with fascination and fear. I was wrong. He activated the display system. Images appeared on every screen in the chamber. Ships burning. Bodies floating in space. The unstoppable figure of CAIN moving through the Keith Voran fleet like death itself. One human destroyed 90% of my fleet. One human killed over 35 million of my soldiers. One human broke the greatest military force in the galaxy. The alien delegates stared at the footage in horrified silence. Some covered their eyes. Others watched with the terrible fascination of beings witnessing something they could not understand. But that is not the most frightening part. Vecthar continued. The most frightening part is what he told me at the end. He played the final recording. CAIN's voice filled the chamber, tired and ancient and terrifying. I am not humanity's greatest weapon. I am the thing they built to make sure they never have to use their greatest weapons. The recording ended. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions, demanded explanations, expressed disbelief. What could be worse than CAN? What was humanity hiding? Director Elena Vasquez rose from her seat in the human delegation. She walked calmly to the central podium, waiting for the noise to die down. Eventually, the chamber fell silent again. I understand your fear, she said. I share it. Every human who knows the truth shares it. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings from dozens of different species. 500 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself. We fought a war that killed billions of our people. We created weapons that could crack planets in half. We developed viruses that could wipe out entire populations. We built machines that could think faster than any living mind, designed for nothing but destruction. She paused, letting the words sink in. We looked at what we had become, and we were horrified. So we made a choice. We would never build weapons of conquest again. We would never expand through violence. We would focus on creation, on growth, on reaching for the stars with open hands. Then why keep this CAN? Someone called out. Why maintain such a weapon if you want peace? Vasquez nodded. It was a fair question, because we also made a promise to ourselves. If anyone tried to take what we had built, if anyone threatened our children, our homes, our future, we would not respond in proportion. We would respond with everything. Her voice hardened. Not because we want to, because we have to. Because if we fight at all, we must win so completely that no one ever thinks of attacking us again. She gestured to the image of CAIN still displayed on the screens. He is our compromise. He is how we fight without destroying ourselves. One soldier, carrying all our capacity for violence so the rest of us can build and dream and hope. He bears the burden of our darkness so that we can live in the light. The chamber was silent. Every delegate was thinking about the implications, a species that had deliberately limited itself, that had buried its weapons and chosen peace. Not because it was weak, but because it knew exactly how strong it was. What do you want from us? One delegate finally asked. Nothing, Vasquez replied. We want to trade. We want to share knowledge. We want to explore the galaxy alongside all of you. We have no interest in conquest or empire. She smiled. It was a warm smile, genuine and hopeful. But we also want you to understand something. We will never start a war. But if anyone starts one with us, we will finish it, not with fleets and armies, but with the thing we buried beneath the ice 300 years ago. The Galactic Council voted that day to formally recognize humanity as a sovereign species. The vote was unanimous. No one wanted to be the species that tested human resolve. The Keith Voran Empire withdrew from all 47 worlds it had conquered. General Vecthar, now calling himself Vecthar the Humbled, personally signed the peace treaties. He would spend the rest of his life warning other species about the danger of underestimating humans. And on Earth, in a quiet garden far from the politics and the fear, CAIN stood among the cherry trees and watched the blossoms fall. Director Vasquez found him there, alone, his hands covered in dirt from working the soil. He looked different without his combat suit, smaller, more human, just a man with tired eyes and scarred hands. The council accepted our terms, she said. No one will threaten Earth again. Good. The galaxy is afraid of us now. Afraid of you. Kane watched a petal drift past his face. They should be. Fear is what keeps peace. They will remember what happened to the Kethvoran, and they will leave humanity alone. Vasquez hesitated before asking her next question. What will you do now? We can put you back in cryo if you want. You've earned your rest. Kane was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. 300 years ago, I asked to be frozen because I could not live with what I had done. I thought I was a monster. I thought the only good I could do was disappear. He knelt down and carefully planted a small seedling in the earth. But now I think maybe monsters can choose what they protect. Maybe the same hands that can destroy can also create. Maybe there is more to me than just killing. He looked up at her. For the first time, there was something like hope in those ancient eyes. I would like to stay. Not as a weapon. Not as a soldier. Just as a human. Trying to find out who I am when I am not at war. Vasquez felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them away. What will you do? Cin smiled. It was a real smile. Warm and genuine. The first in 300 years. I think I would like to learn how to garden. To grow things instead of destroying them. To watch something live because of me instead of die. He returned to his work, gently pressing soil around the roots of the seedling. Maybe that is what I was always meant to do. Not to be a monster, but to be the guardian who makes sure no one else has to become one. Vasquez watched him for a while, then turned and walked away. She left him alone in the garden, surrounded by flowers and growing things. A weapon of mass destruction learning how to nurture life. In the archives of every civilization in the galaxy, a new file had been created. It would remain there for thousands of years. A warning to every species that might consider threatening the small blue world called Earth. Classification. Absolute threat. Species. Human. Military assessment. Do not engage. Reason. They only need one, but there was another file. One that fewer beings knew about. It was smaller, less official, more like a note than a report. It had been added by General Vekthar himself before he retired from military service forever. I have seen the monster that humans created. I have felt his fists break my bones. I have watched him destroy everything I built. But I have also seen him spare my life when he could have taken it. I have heard him speak of peace when he was built for war. I have watched him walk away from violence when every fiber of his being was designed for nothing else. The humans call him Can, after the first murderer in their mythology. But I think they named him wrong. He is not the first murderer. He is the last. He is what they created to make sure they never have to create anything like him again. And that, more than anything else, is why I am afraid of humanity. Not because they made a monster, but because the monster chose to be human anyway. In a garden on Earth, surrounded by cherry blossoms and the soft sounds of growing things, Kane planted another seedling and smiled at the sun. The war was over. The monster was learning to be a man, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson they had learned. Some species should not be underestimated. Some worlds should not be threatened, and some soldiers are worth more than armies. Humanity had proven that truth with fire and blood. Now they would prove it with gardens and hope. One soldier, one choice, one future, growing from the ashes of war. That was the human way.